Now we're going to be looking at attributes. One of the things you have to remember with attributes is all the issues about privacy and confidentiality, because anytime you manage a database, you have all sorts of private information in there, and you have to remember that that private information can show up in the GIS. And in this case, we're actually opening some layers that have some private information. So you have to be very, very vigilant that you don't go and start distributing data that has all sorts of identifiable information. So for example, in the houses that we looked at before, we were missing the private houses. The reason that the private houses were missing was not that they were not digitized, is that that's private information and we should not use it in a course. So they were strategically removed and we only left the public buildings. And likewise, when we showed you the GPS, we did not enter the actual names of the real people who live there for the same reason, because there's certain confidentiality to the data that must be respected. So that's something to keep in mind. So here we're going to open a shapefile called census division, and we're going to be looking at that file to look at the attributes and so forth. So we open it up, and there we have it. It's the census division layer. And if we want to see what some of the attributes are, etc., we can use the information tool and click on one of these, and then we see that we have lots of different Statistics Canada information for each of these census divisions. Statistics Canada makes available data at different boundaries. This is the sub-provincial level. They have one that's just for the whole province, then divided up into 19 census divisions, and then there are census subdivisions, and those are the municipalities, anything that's self-governing. So the county would be a census subdivision, a city would be a census subdivision, and all reserves are, of course, census subdivisions, because all reserves are self-governing. Hamlets are not, but villages, towns, improvement districts, municipal districts, etc., or all those are census subdivisions. And then, of course, it can get smaller and smaller as you go along. So very straightforward kind of stuff. Let's add another layer and let's look at the reserves in context of this. So we will take a look at the reserves here. And we open up the reserves layer. Open it. And because both of the projections, both for the reserve and for the census divisions, were the same projection, everything matches up nicely. If they hadn't, this red box would have gotten smaller suddenly, because they would have said that we have some stuff far away, and they would have had to translate one over the other. Some of you may be looking at some of these things. For example, Picanha Reserve here. Why does it look like it's split? The Blood Reserve especially. Same thing with Sixica, Saddle Lake, and so forth. Why are all these split? The reason is that this is a very nice reserves layer that actually shows the road allowances and so forth. So that's the reason. And I can zoom in, for example, into reserve right here, Picanha, and then you can see that the parts that are administered by the province, the roads and so forth, are showing up in as municipal jurisdiction versus the First Nations jurisdiction. And you can see that it's quite a lot of detail in this particular instance. So right there we can see that we have attributes, and we we have some attributes for the reserves as well as we go forward here. But we're going to look at the information for the reserves here, and since we have the reserves highlighted, we can open the attribute layer, and we have this showing up right here, so we can see all the different layers of information that we have for the reserves layer. And if we want to do a quick search, we can say right here alt name, alternative name, and we'll write Alexander in there, and I'll press the search button, and then I will get the instances of the Alexander Reserve. So I have one right there, record number 8 or object number 9, and I also have one at 112 and 113, 2 more instances of the Alexander Reserve. If I move my box around here, I can see the highlighted entries right there. So those are the reserves that are part of the Alexander First Nation. And so Alexander is one of those unique, it's not the only one, but one of those, one of the First Nations that has reserves on 2 different treaty areas, on Treaty 8 and Treaty 6 in this particular instance. So kind of an interesting situation right there. But that's all it takes to do a very simple query. And you know, it's very, very straightforward to go and do this. Now, if you want to see the ones that were selected, you can say View and Zoom to Selection, and it will automatically zoom in to the reserves that are within the found criteria. So in this case, it found those instances, and then we can actually click on the different ones and find out more information about them. So I can click here, and I can see that this is Alexander 134, and this is 134A. I'm not sure where it's showing the 3rd instance, but there we go. So that's the records that it has found, and they're all part of the Alexander First Nation.